They stripped off their waders and dismantled their rods and put all the fishing impedimenta in the boot of Patricia's car. Hamish produced a picnic basket from which he removed thick chicken sandwiches and a flask of coffee. They were sitting on a flat rock beside the river when a truculent voice behind them said, "I hope you haven't been fishing in this river, Macbeth."
"Oh, it is yourself, Willie,"
said Hamish without turning around.
No. Miss Martin Broyd and myself were just having the picnic."
Patricia swung round, her mouth full of sandwich.
"Willie McPhee, the water bailiff,"
said Hamish, his eyes signalling a warning. Willie was a thick-set man with beetling brows and a red, weather-beaten face. He had a heavy, round chin, but his head tapered to a narrow crown, giving the appearance of a face seen reflected in a shiny balloon. He lumbered up to Patricia's car and peered in the windows. Patricia's heart beat hard. All at once she knew Hamish's reason for shutting all the fishing stuff up in the boot. He did not have a fishing permit. Willie came back and stood over them. "I hope you know, missus," he said, addressing Patricia, "that you cannae fish the Anstey without a permit." The daughter of the land agent felt quite queasy. She wondered why she had never stopped to consider how a Highland policeman could even afford the probably horrendous price of a fishing permit. But she did not like being loomed over. Miss Patricia Martin Broyd got to her feet.
"Are you accusing me of poaching, my good man?"
she demanded in glacial tones. Willie gave an odd, ducking movement of his head, like a dog backing down before a more powerful adversary. "Just making sure," he said sulkily. "Macbeth here has no respect for the law." With that, he lumbered off. Patricia waited until she was sure he was out of earshot, and then rounded on Hamish.
"How could you? And you a policeman?" "Well, I'm a Highlander as well, and it is considered no crime up here to take a fish from the river."
"If it is no crime, then why do they have game laws, and why do they have water bailiffs?"
"That," said Hamish, unrepentant, "is to add a spice of danger to the sport. We'll just enjoy our meal and try the river again."
"Are you mad? I, for one, do not want to appear in a Scottish sheriff's court."
"He won't be back,"
said Hamish cheerfully.
"He's lazy. He only picks on easy targets."
Patricia was about to suggest sternly that she return home immediately, but in that moment a picture of her wind-swept cottage arose in her mind's eye. Having broken out of her long isolation, she was reluctant to go back to it. She gave a weak smile. "You are a terrible man. You must be in your 30s, and yet you are still only a policeman. Is that because you have little respect for the law?"
"Except for the fishing, I have the great respect for the law," said Hamish. "But I like Loch Dhu, and I hate Strathbane, which is where I would have to go if I got promoted."
"But everyone is ambitious."
"And not everyone is happy. You are looking at the exception to the rule."
The trio walked through the woods, down to the plains before the Swan River, where a signal fire burned. It glowed on the flatlands like the gateway to some infernal realm, and led them onwards, until, much used up by the trek, they found camp. One of the clan dogs was hung on skewers over the flames. It had been roughly skinned, but the head and feet remained, and its teeth was bared in a strange petrified grin. Some meat was passed to them, and it was thoroughly blackened and speckled with sandy ash. They ate, and Batman put his questions to them. "You see them off?" "We did." "A sorry a bunch of crows I never knew." Bill pulled dog hair from his mouth. He chewed the black and fibrous meat around and tried to swallow. "They won't catch us," he said. "They couldn't catch Clapp in a cat house." Batman tossed his tea dregs on the fire. The night lay heavy upon them. But for the dim flare of the coals as the wind worked through the campsite, there was no light at all, and Black Bill slept uneasily. He woke once and sat upright in his blankets. The two remaining native dogs fought over the offal from their gutted comrade, snatching at each other or snarling, until Bill stood, kicked one dog in the rump, sending it skittering, and both scattered into the darkness. When he turned back, the clever woman was staring at him. She was perched like a black abomination near the coal glow, and the shells at her throat chattered as she raised her jowled arms towards the sky. She said the moon sat wrongly. Bill looked up, but there was nothing beyond the press of limbs and leaves, nothing but the night itself. "Wita? Miungti? Biek?" he said. She told him to look again, and when he gazed upwards, the cloud cover dispersed, and there was a ponderous moon as white as the rolling eye of a convulsive. Black Bill studied the awful sight, then turned his face away. The clever woman whispered something through the darkness, but he was not listening. He lowered himself onto his bedding and gathered the blankets around his shoulders. The clever woman continued to whisper. She claimed that Manalagena was conjuring beneath this moon, and his retribution would be proffered blind and blood-slick like the battles of old. She held up her own bound hands, as if to show how that act might be done. Bill lowered his hat over his eyes, and in that unspoiled darkness, his mind worked upon the image of a woman and her swollen belly, and his own hand placed on her. He huddled there, and kept his thoughts ever enclosed. Soon the clever woman fell silent. In the night, his unborn son found him, as he sometimes had. Bill carried him through a stand of fired sassafras, and all about was blackened, and the burnt ground shattered as he trod it. They moved between the killed trees and into a clearing, father and son. At the center of the burn stood a black gibbet, and from the noose swung a body, a charred body, its white eyes open. Bill placed the boy down in that cauterized country, and the child looked up at the gently swaying corpse. "Who is it?" he said, but Bill was gone rigid with grief. The sun was hot against my eyelids. Bringing my hand to my neck, I felt only one dog collar. Hers. I ran my fingers over its worn leather and stiff stitching, touched the tiny rips at the edges, its cold circular tag. I traced my fingers over its engraved letters. D. H. Mine. So where was Ashley's collar? And what time was it anyway? I patted down my chest, felt over the mattress and pillow. Nothing. But I know I'd caught her. We'd gone all the way, just like she promised. So why didn't I have her collar? Why didn't she have mine? I tried to force my brain to think, remember. Her sweet rosy perfume was still stuck inside my nostrils. I tasted mud on my teeth. In my gums, I tasted Ashley's fairy dust. Forcing my eyes fully open, I made my gaze move across the bed, looking for Ashley's thin, shiny pink dog collar. It wasn't on the floor either. It hadn't fallen off me in the night. I was curved like a banana on top of the sheets, still in my dad's old army shirt, still muddy. There was dirt and leaves everywhere, and I was wet, soaked through. Sweat? No. Rain. There'd been a storm last night. I must have been pretty fucked up not to remember that straight up. Even my boots were still on. But there was no collar. Nowhere. Not hers. Maybe I dropped it in the woods. Ashley would kill me if I'd lost it. They all would. We'd have to get her another one before we could play the game again. I sat up, immediately wishing I hadn't. My collar felt too tight around my neck, and I fumbled to get it off, my hands still drunk and awkward. Touching my neck made me feel even sicker. I chucked my collar onto the pillow, then pulled my shirt off too, pressing my hand to where my tat started at the base of my spine. I tried to breathe deeper. Everything about me stank, but there was no puke or piss on the carpet, not that I could see. I remembered Ed boasting about once being so drunk after the game that he'd pissed in the corner of his room. He said something about being as drunk as Mac's dad. Then he ducked quick from Mac's fist after. I knew I should text him, find out who won. I knew I should text Ashley. I felt down my damp, clinging cargo pants, but didn't find my phone. Had I lost that too? My head hurt too much for thinking. I'd hammered my brain cells. We'd been going at it pretty hard in the parking lot first, and then, of course, in the woods. After Ashley had given me that fairy dust, the woods had changed into something mixed up. Fairyland, Ashley had said, giggling. Just slip down into it. But what else had I slipped down into? Ashley? I licked my lips to try to taste her. Then I stared at my boots like they could give me more memories. Mud was all over them, a leaf caught in a shoelace. They looked about as battered as my brain. I remembered my face against something damp, the smell of dirt. There were still bits of forest in my hair. I pushed the boots off me rough, kicked them under the bed. I grabbed the covers and pulled them over my face to stop the sunlight, burying myself. I wanted sleep. I wanted Ashley to touch me and do what she must have done last night all over again. But this time, so I could remember it. I wanted coffee. I lay there, but no coffee or Ashley magically appeared. Even sleep stayed away. Too much head pain. I kept my eyes closed anyway. Last night hadn't been like the other game nights, and it wasn't just because of the sex Ashley had promised. For a start, there'd been that fairy dust. Ashley had spun some story about fairies in the woods, how we'd see them once the dust kicked in. Just go with it, she'd said, rubbing that stuff into our gums. She was good at getting drugs, but she'd never got that shit before. Charlie had laughed like a hyena. I'd seen his face stretch into a snout. And you get special treatment, she'd whispered, dust in my gums so much I'd gagged. And later, we'd been on the forest floor. We'd been going all the way. I tried to remember the feel of it, the feel of her, the softness of her skin around me, her warmth. Nothing. What was the point of fucking if you couldn't remember it? What was the point of any of it if you got head pain like this? Maybe someone punched me real hard at the end of the game. Maybe that was why this wasn't coming back. Was that why I didn't have a collar neither? I finally saw my phone on the table beside the bed, punched out a message to her. What you doing, sexy? Did it sound too blunt? Like I didn't care about her at all? Just wanted sex? Did I sound like an arse? I sent it anyway. Then I put my head back on the pillow and waited for her reply. She'd send me something cute, maybe even a photo. She'd been doing that a lot lately, letting me see her in her bed, in her pajamas, showing me the undies she had on. But right now, with the way my head was, even if she just told me she'd had a good time last night, even that would do. Even if she just told me who'd won the most dog collars, who'd won the game. I dreamt she was touching me. I felt her bitten down fingernails across my stomach. She tasted of sugar, and her tongue darted around my teeth like a fish. Then she was putting me inside her mouth, and she was making me warm. I was having her. Almost. I was almost letting go. I dreamt till the sunlight heated me up again, and a text message beat beside my ear. I smiled. I was hard from the dream, ripe, ready for her cute words. Perhaps I'd call her, and she'd talk low and dirty in my ear. Perhaps she'd remind me what we did last night. But it was from Mac. I read it anyway, leaning onto my elbows. I stared at the words for ages. The longer I read them, the more I started to wake up. You heard what happened? You okay? Come round, mate. What was he on about? Did I do something stupid last night? Was I that wasted? I checked through my other messages. Nothing from Ashley since before the game. No reply to the message I sent her either. Was she in a mood? It wasn't like her to ignore me for long. I frowned. There was a word in my brain, coming at me out of nowhere. Useless. Why? Had she called me that last night? Is that how I'd been when we'd been doing it? Too fucked on the drugs to get it up? Too fucked to care? In the end, I typed to Mac. What you mean? I'm okay. Headache. Mac called. His voice was husky and tired sounding. Had an edge. You don't know anything? No one's been round to you or nothing like that? The police? No, what? What do you mean? I heard him breathe in. You don't know about Ashley? I was silent, so fucking confused. Come round, mate, he said. Just come round. We need to work something out.